A French naval vessel docks in New York Harbor in 1965, and they're about to collect on American golds just as the America promise made at Bretton Woods. And therefore, the crew just casually walks into the Federal Reserve, loads up gold bars worth over $1 billion, and sails back home to Paris. This is the biggest ripoff the world has ever seen, and yet no weapons or threats are being made on the scene. Although it's just a contract simply being honored, but still nobody would expected anybody to pull off such a brilliant move upon anyone, or in this case, upon any nation. I will tell you how is this even possible to do in the first place, and therefore, let me introduce the mastermind behind all of this. Jacques Rueff, a French economist that had found the clause to make everything possible, buried inside an agreement the Americans had signed 20 years earlier and apparently nobody even bothered to look at. Rueff didn't just find a loophole, he found a ticking time bomb that the Americans had been sitting on since 1944, betting that no one would ever be so rude to even look at the fine print. But unfortunately, the French president, Charles de Gaulle, wasn't so interested in being polite. He was interested in getting paid. To understand what exactly the France did, you have to go back to July 1944. The war isn't over yet, but 730 delegates from 44 countries have already gathered at a resort hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. They wanted to decide what money is going to look like when the war is over. The deal they struck sounds simple. Every major currency gets pegged to the US dollar, and the dollar gets pegged to a gold at $35 per ounce. And here's the most important part about the whole situation. Any nation at any time could walk up to the US Federal Reserve and swap their dollars for gold at that fixed price. It was written exactly right into the agreement. No conditions, no asterisks. America agreed to this because in 1944, it just made sense. And that's because the US held roughly 2/3 of the world's gold reserves, which, in other words, the dollar was as good as the gold because there was genuinely enough gold to back it up. Everything is possible because of the urgency about the system that needed a stable anchor currency to rebuild a shattered global economy. So therefore, America volunteered and everyone signed. But economist Robert Triffin had already identified the mathematical impossibility buried in this design. What later became known as the Triffin Dilemma, which predicted that the dollar's role as the world's reserve currency would inevitably force America into unsustainable deficits. That's because the world would need more dollars to grow, but more dollars meant fewer gold reserves to back them up. The math just started breaking almost immediately. To rebuild Europe through the Marshall Plan, fund the Korean War, and to keep military bases running across the globe, America had to spend, which meant printing more dollars. The more dollars flowing into the world, the more claims on that $35 gold price on America. And that's just the beginning of the problem, because the gold just sitting there in the vault while the pile of IOUs kept climbing. But it just got worse. Nobody in 1944 paused to ask what happens when the receipts outnumber the gold. I don't think it was a political failure or a moral failure. It was more about an arithmetic failure, which a promise made without ever checking whether the numbers could ever hold in the long term. A $35 peg didn't just merely a fixed price. It handed every central bank on earth the combination to the vault, with a written guarantee that the door would open on demand at any occasion. When the contract was signed, the clock started ticking, and surprisingly, for nearly 20 years, nobody called it in, because everyone assumed someone else would be the one to blink first. Until one economist in Paris read every single word of it and realized nobody actually had to blink at all. The Americans assumed they were safe because they controlled the printing press, but what they didn't expect at all was the man who had already saw through the crack on exactly when the press would print more than the vault could answer for. And also, the man walking that calculation directly into the Élysée Palace. Jacques Rueff wasn't a flashy person. He was a French economist, trained in the classical tradition, deeply influenced by the thinkers who believed money had to mean something real. By the early 1960s, he was advising Charles de Gaulle directly, and he developed one core argument that he kept pushing in memos and meetings year after year. His argument was simple. Bretton Woods had given America what he called a deficit without tears. America could buy real goods, like cars, oil, machinery, grain, from the rest of the world by paying in dollars it printed itself. And because those dollars were accepted everywhere as the global reserve currency, nobody could demand anything more real in exchange. But then, France sold America something that tangible, and America have to pay with the paper they created. And the world called that trade balanced. Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, who would later become France's finance minister and then its president, gave this arrangement a sharper name: exorbitant privilege. The phrase alone is really stuck because it was that accurate. No other country on earth could run persistent deficits and have the rest of the world simply absorb them without the consequence. But Rueff had spotted something the privilege holders seemed to have forgotten. The gold redemption clause was still live. Legally, any central bank could still walk to the Fed window and convert dollars into gold at $35 an ounce, although nobody was using it. But nobody had canceled it either. On February 4th, 1965, de Gaulle stood in front of cameras and declared that gold was the only money with no nationality and the only store of value that belonged to no single government, although the press treated it as philosophy. But it wasn't. It was a starting gun. The gold was still locked safely inside a vault in Manhattan, but France had just told the world they were coming to collect their victory. The day after de Gaulle's press conference, the Banque de France started converting dollar reserves into a gold at the Fed window, legally, at $35 an ounce, exactly as the contract said they could. But it just got worse. France had already signaled its intentions by withdrawing from the London gold pool in 1967, by abandoning the coordinated effort to defend the $35 gold price. So therefore, this move freed France from any obligation to help stabilize the very system it was about to exploit. What happened next was one of the most diabolical financial operations in modern history, and almost nobody saw it coming. That's because it's hidden inside the paperwork that looked completely routine. So here's how it works. The French split the repatriation into 3 separate operations, each with a different code name. Affair 18 handled gold moving by the sea from New York. Affair 19 and Affair 20 handled the air transport, cargo flights out of London and New York routed back to Paris. To put that into perspective, in 1965 and 1966 alone, 94 Air France cargo flights carried 1,175 tons out of London. Another 1,638 tons came out of the United States across 24 boat trips and 35 air flights. When Didier Brunel, honorary director general of the Banque de France, finally tallied the full operation in his book Les Secrets de l'Or, the number came to 3,313 tons, all of it repatriated legally at a price the Americans had guaranteed in its contract. And here's come the part that anybody would have expected to be happen. France wasn't alone for long. Belgium followed, and then West Germany. So therefore, the Fed window was getting busy. By 1971, foreign governments held claims on roughly 3 times more gold than physically existed in US vaults. The $35 price wasn't a rate anymore. It was a fiction. A polite agreement between governments not to say the word bankrupt out loud. By 1971, the vault was screaming. But surprisingly, it wasn't the French who finally forced the issue. It was a soft-spoken Dutchman named Jelle Zylstra, president of the Dutch Central Bank, who sent a delegation to Washington with a straightforward request. The Netherlands would like its gold, please. So therefore, the Federal Reserve has to flew its own team to Amsterdam to talk them out of it. But Zylstra didn't budge. When Volcker's team suggested the amount the Dutch wanted was too large to move without destabilizing markets, Zylstra reportedly told them that if moving that amount would sink the boat had already sunk. They just hadn't quite admitted it yet. John Connolly summed up America's position with characteristic bluntness. The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem. The attitude here was clear. America would protect its interests, regardless of what that meant for everyone else. On August 15, 1971, Nixon went on television. In just 15 minutes, he suspended the right of foreign governments to redeem the dollars for gold. Surprisingly, after 27 years of Bretton Woods Agreement just ended in a single Sunday night broadcast. And just like that, the window just closed permanently. The immediate attempt to salvage the system came with the Smithsonian Agreement in December 1971, which they tried to maintain fixed exchange rates without gold convertibility. But surprisingly, it barely lasted for 2 years before collapsing entirely. The gold, which France had collected at $35 an ounce, hit $800 by 1980. The dollar lost 96% of its value against gold over those 12 years. The 3,313 tons France had moved out of Manhattan at the guaranteed contract price became worth hundreds of billions, because the guarantee collapsed the moment France finished collecting on it. The vault just closed, and the math was settled. The answer to the question Rueff had been raising since 1961 was stacked in gold bars 28 meters beneath the streets of Paris. France just won and claimed their victory. But look at what the Banque de France has been doing ever since. Reinforcing vault floors, upgrading every bar to current market standards, and quietly repatriating another 221 tons from London around 2015. They're not preserving a museum piece. They're keeping the position tradable. Someone in Paris might still reading at the fine print. And therefore, the question worth sitting with is, who else is? The vault underneath the Banque de France is called La Souterraine. It sits 8 basement levels down, 28 meters below street level, inside an 11,000 square meter space held up by 658 columns. 5 bank officers have permanent access. Getting in requires 2 separate elevators, a 7-ton armored door, a 17-ton steel block on rails, and a second security barrier before you reach the actual gold. After the 2008 financial crisis, France repatriated another 211 tons and spent 9 years, from 2009 to 2018, upgrading every bar in the vault to current wholesale delivery standards. The American bars France had collected in the 1960s were considered too rough for modern markets. That's because the old U.S. assay office bricks just become irregular and beat up. They got melted down and recast. The floors got reinforced to hold forklifts. New compartments were added for single bars and sealed pallets, and a full IT system was built in. The Banque de France now offers custody and trading services to institutional clients, competing directly with London for gold market business. That's because they're not sitting on a relic, so therefore, they built a trading operation system around it. The heist, Rueff designed in 1965, is still paying out, just in a different form. If you find this video valuable, please consider join the community and like this video to make the algorithm do your favor. Watch my other videos similar to this one, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.